2023 to 2040. So at the first part of the presentation, we have 5 outstanding speakers. First of all, let me introduce Keats. He is the director at K4K Training and Advisory and at EKON Strategy Consulting. He is also our moderator at today's first panel session.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. And we have Maria Navarro. She is the Director of Business Development at Soto Solar. And she's very beautiful too. And we have, good morning. And we have Alfonso. He is the investment manager at Foresight Group. And we have Pablo Otin. He is the CEO and co-founder at Powertis. Finally, let me introduce Hugo. He is the technical director at Everwood Capital. And now I'll handle the host to our moderator, Keats.
Thanks, Bruce. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Most of us are probably comfortable in English and in Spanish. We're going to do everything in English for now. Those who know me, I tend to speak very fast, but I'm moderating today. So I shall moderate myself as well by making sure that I don't run away with too many ideas. Now, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit about what it is that we're really talking about in this context. It wasn't that long ago, at least conceptually speaking, Spain only had about 5,000 megawatts or 5,000 megawatts of installed photovoltaic capacity. Unable to meet the targets in 2020, the government undertook the process of allocating capacity through a series of auctions, and that process still continues with a different approach to them. But year on year, we've been in a pretty comfortable position where we're getting to the past the 15,000 megawatt mark as of the beginning of this year. What's interesting about that is obviously there's been lessons to be learned about what it is that we're achieving historically, but clearly we have a long way to go with respect to how it is we move things into the future. The panelists that we have today come from a little bit across the sort of development pipeline, if you will, from the perspective of investments to actually deploying additional capacity. So what we're hoping to do today is to try and get some ideas from them as to where it is that they've seen success so far in the market with respect to PV, the integration thereof, and also as we look towards the future. I'm going to try and split it into two. The other one is to look into the future and say, well, where is it that we find the bottlenecks or the constraints with respect to achieving much higher levels of penetration? So with that, we should end up at some point where maybe we've overdone it with respect to too much solar, and then we'll actually be in a position to hand over to those in the second panel session from 11 a.m., which will basically be dealing with the issue of green hydrogen. Okay, so I wonder if we kick things off. I'll just go to Maria because I've got you first in front here. What's your view with respect to how things have been evolving over the last few years? What do you think the main successes have been with respect to sort of achieving a sort of threefold increase from what was originally, where we originally started from, about 5 or 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, okay. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this interesting webinar. Where we stand, I think, is just the seed of the future to come. I think, and you said, Kim, it's been an interesting and very challenging path. But I'm pretty sure that in particular in renewables and in particular in solar, it is a no return. No, so I think my company Soto Solar, we are developers. We are in the market. We are in the field, in the trenches, and we feel the support at all levels, institutionally, at local, at national level, even at European level. But we also feel the challenge of getting things down to earth. We have a pretty good ambition on getting 2 gigawatts on our own. That would add up to all sector efforts to get into the 50 gigawatts plan for 2050 that is envisioning, or even more, no, from the EU in the package Fit for 55. So my point, I think, and maybe it's interesting also to hear the insights from the colleagues and also from the attendants, how everybody sees this. Just to share my views and my company views. It is no doubt that we will gonna make it, but how the path would be, it's what we need to understand and being flexible. So my first point would be, are we flexible enough to adapt to situations? We've been challenged with this sad situation on the Ukrainian crisis, but on the other hand, boosting renewables. Are our governments if flexible enough to put the framework, reliable framework, to boost solar? Are the investors willing to take that onto their strategy paths? Are the developers quick enough to put together all the pieces and say, yes, I'm here, I will go for it? I'm pretty optimistic on this, to be honest. But on top of the flexibility, I would say that we will need a holistic approach in which all the parties, all the actors put together to go into that. So we learn from the past and we smooth things and we fast track, because my other word that I would like to share is fast track, fast, really, really fast. But if I would add just the third idea to this webinar, not to keep it as a present thought, but future-proof. And to be future-proof, we need to be reliable, and we need to think in the criteria that would lead us onto this. So to be more concrete, tender capacities, auctions capacities, fast tracking regulations, everything needs to make sense and being solid, so everybody can take their part and boost for it. I will leave it here just as an introduction.
Cool, thanks, Maria. How do you see things, Alfonso? Just to move over to you. You know, what sort of lessons have you taken from the last few years of you guys trying to roll out projects? And by the way, I'd like to bring you in as well a little bit, because obviously I know everyone has that international experience as well. But how is it that you compare Spain to experiences elsewhere?
Well, I think over the last 3-4 years, the Spanish market has been quite an exciting market for the deployment of new renewable capacity. And I will say that on this, and particularly on the new wave of unsubsidized projects that started in Spain in 2016, 2017, we have been kind of the spearhead in Europe. We see now how other countries are exporting lesson learned here in Spain. We have initially we lived a period in which everything was going in, let's say, in favor of the market, declining EPC prices. Development process was a bit more speedy. A lot of interest from international investors, so it was obvious that there was a lot of interest in the Spanish market, also because of some natural conditions of high radiation, availability of land, and some other external factor. But we have also seen how the market has been resilient to first a pandemic that brought prices to the bottom, even as low as 15-20 euros, or to all these some regulatory changes caused by the Ukrainian and Russia situation. And we still see that the market is very active and going ahead. Of course, it is evolving. Maybe now there is a bit more of trend, let's say, from investor perspective of taking merchant revenues, while at the beginning everything was channeled through PPAs. Indeed, I see how other, let's say, the very active PPA market that we have in Spain, now they are copying that in other jurisdictions in Europe, that they are starting to see also the development and subsidized projects on the back of PPAs. So yeah, I think of course there have been some challenges in the road. Some of them, for example, is the time that is now taking the development process due to, let's say, kind of overload from the administrations, because they are receiving tons of, or let's say, a lot of gigawatts of new capacity for which they were not prepared for the process of developing from an administrative and an environmental perspective. And probably we also need to keep working not only in the development of solar, but also on those adjacent technologies and infrastructure, such as interconnections or batteries, that will allow us to accommodate all this new solar capacity that is suddenly entering into the market. As you say, Kim, how we have passed in 3-4 years from 4 gigawatt to, I believe, 15 that we have at the moment, and it's still expected to grow exponentially.
Kim?
You're on mute, Kim.
It's interesting how you the issue around what's the economics around these projects. Maria brought it up, right? We also have we had auctions, but people were not really waiting for the auctions to government-backed, feed-in tariffs. I still find that there's a lot of continuity, inertia, I think it's a better word, with respect to how people think that you have to develop capacity. And I think that leaves a lot to be asked for, to be honest, because I think there's lots of opportunities to try and find alternative ways to hedge and understand your risks with respect to trying to deploy capacity of this type. So on that, I'll bring in Hugo. Hugo, what's your perspective with respect to your experiences up to date with respect to trying to get projects financed in Spain, and how do you see that working? How it's worked historically? How do you think there'll be changes coming into the future?
Well, I think that Maria and Alfonso already explained very well how is the situation. Okay, but it is true that if you see in Spain, I've been working here in the renewable sector since 2004, so I suffer almost everything. And the story of the renewables and the solar in Spain is a story about the regulation changes, about the processes changes. So depending on the regulation, the market is. But the truth is, if you think in Spain, that is for sure the best country in Europe for installing solar. As Alfonso says, we have the highest result in the whole Europe. We have availability for land. So I don't know if I know very good grid, but at least a good one to having more. But we already have now 15 gigawatts after all those years, while other countries like Germany has 60 gigawatts, or Italy 20, the UK also more than 21 gigawatts. So that's why, because of the regulation here in Spain, is a crazy thing, as Alfonso says, and I would like to underline this. We have, since 5 years ago, something like that, plenty of projects, plenty of investors trying to invest Spanish, English, the European, American, for overseas. But the truth is that the administration and the government doesn't adapt to this. If the goal is to have a green economy and for sure green energy, the thing is that all of the developers, all of the investors are a lot of advanced instead of the administration. Nowadays is a crazy thing. We have deadlines. We are expecting an action capacity, which is not. Nobody knows how it's going to be, where it's going to be. We are suffering arbitrary decisions from the administration. We don't have clear view or how is the process in the sense of the each administration is making its own interpretation about how the thing's done. So honestly, I'm optimistic in the future because, as I told you, Spain has all the fundamentals for the solar and for the green energy in general. But the truth is that we need that the administration speed up the process to adapt everything, digitizations, the processes of approbation itself, and so on.
Do you think that the regulatory changes, I mean, I'm particularly thinking around, the fact that the Spanish government seems, if I may, say that they seem to be more focused on short-term issues like solutions to try and bring down electricity prices to the final consumer, rather than trying to put the emphasis on what the medium to long-term solution, which is, to integrate renewables more aggressively into the grid. What do you think, Hugo?
No, I think that for sure we have a problem in the short term regarding the gas, regarding the electricity prices and so on. But I think if you think the whole pictures, the subsidies nowadays are for the gas oil and the gas for the cars, for the oil and gas producers in the conventional plants, and no for the green. So the price are lower and so on. So as you say, I think that they have to think in the long term for sure. I don't know what is the best solution nowadays for raising the prices. If 5 years ago we were able to have, instead of 50 gigawatts of solar, for example, for sure the prices will be lower. But that's something I think that the lack of view in the long term, having a plan and a specific plan for 4 years, 5 years, or something like that, as we have in other countries. I remember my experience in Japan. In Japan was clear after Fukushima, they have a plan to substitute the nuclear for solar and wind, and this is the plan, and the plan was done in the long term of 5-10 years. Here we need something like that, apart from, for sure, the specific things. Okay, we have any other constraints regarding Ukraine, regarding the COVID, supply chains, bottlenecks, and so on. But yeah.
Do you think, Maria, do you think that the regulatory uncertainty is playing havoc with things, or do you think that it's something which investors and developers are, taking in their stride, explaining to all the other stakeholders and just living with it? So there's an expectation that the fundamentals are stronger than whatever it is that the government whim of the day or whatever problems they're providing. How do you see that?
Yeah, so I think yes and no, depends on the day. So maybe I answer your question. It is true that, as I was mentioning and my colleagues in the panel was saying, we need more clear regulation, and maybe we need, because we are in one part of the market, which are the producer and investors, maybe we tend to see, oh, maybe regulation is more focused on short-term issues. But if you see the whole picture, everything is related. So everything needs to be taken properly care. And the prices that affects the particular consumers are also linked to our returns, the appetite for merchant. So we, at some point, we need to be flexible to navigate these waters. I don't think anybody that has jumped into the market is full enough to say it's going to be an easy way, because it's not. It's very exciting, and also requires, as I said, a holistic approach and a long-term view. The problem maybe comes when we focus in short-term, and I'm talking in all aspects. No, we think that the best approach for this is not think in your own silo, but think on the future proof of your own investments. If we think that the regulation is only focusing on that, maybe we are losing part of the picture. So my view is that we are in the path to get into a more comfortable scenario. the task is not easy. We are, of course, eager to see how we materialize the tenders, the criteria, which I think is a great idea, but needs to be done as soon as possible, because it's been almost 2 years, or almost 1 year, but with a moratorium, almost 2 years waiting to actually develop with the queue. So it's a lot of appetite, and I really think that regulation, it's in the path to get into the best position for everybody. But it's also, I think, not fair to say that's your problem. No, government is your problem. No, we are all on this, and we propose, and we also, with our appetite and with the investors saying, yes, I'm here in Spain. Why? And Hugo explained, also Alfonso, Spain has all whatever is needed to be leading for many years on renewables, and particularly on solar, because we have the land, because we have the sun, and because we are putting the roots to have a very strong regulation that leads us to success. So I would tend to see that we're in the process to get into the desirable situation that everybody will have. But I really would like to emphasize the long-term view, the future-proof, the way to develop projects in which are rock solid, not leaving the space for opportunistic, let's say, projects, which doesn't add much to that reliability. And on our side, from Soto, we are here to help. So it's something that I really would like also to share with the audience. Everybody has a voice in solar. That's another important thing, that maybe renewables, it came different from other sources. From many years, we've been dragged into the fossil fuels, in which some countries or some forces induct us what to do. We can solve that, and we can hear everybody, and we can hear the government, and we can hear the developers, we can hear the investors, and we can hear the local people that are receiving the solar and doing a fair energy transition for everyone. So I really think we are in the process to get into that.
Cool. I like your word on future-proofing. One of the things to bear in mind is, we look forward to projects, whether it's solar or wind. I mean, we have more wind historically, and still, I think 28 gigawatts of wind, right? So that's not growing as fast as solar is, obviously. So, there's a certain, I don't know whether we're at saturation point. In theory, according to the PNIEC, the NECP, we should be also charging for with a lot more wind. The interesting thing about that, if people are unaware, is that we get, solar, obviously we have lots of sun, but the other one that people tend to forget is they don't realize that there's actually quite a bit of wind, whether it's nighttime, daytime, anywhere in the Iberian Peninsula. So we're quite well gifted with respect to that as well. But in respect to future proofing, Alfonso, oh, by the way, I should mention that Pablo Otin couldn't make it. He'll be making a separate presentation, and then we'll add it to the webinar once it's online in due course, okay? So I just wanted to switch to Alfonso and have a sort of raise the issue of future-proofing projects by looking at, what other sort of integration technologies will actually be required, and especially around the issue of how do you see grid constraints on the one side, or, do we need to do more of an effort to support the system operator, Red Eléctrica, with respect to, what do they do with respect to batteries or optimization and things of that nature? So any views on that, Alfonso?
Yes, thanks, Kim. Indeed, I think this is going to be one of the key items to focus over the coming years. I mean, solar projects will continue to be developed and built, although with all the, let's say, short-term challenges by the administration that Hugo was mentioning before. But we are living quite a good, let's say, moment in the Spanish solar sector. But we need to start thinking on how we are going to accommodate all that extra solar capacity that is coming to the market. For instance, from last year, we are already seeing that solar prices are lower than average baseload prices, what we tend to call solar cannibalization. And as more solar capacity is added to the market, this difference between solar prices and baseload prices will continue to increase exponentially if we do not take the necessary actions to mitigate this issue. Indeed, one of the main things in which we need to focus in general from the renewable sector is on pushing and trying to promote the interconnections with the rest of Europe. That will be beneficial both to the Spanish solar sector and also to European consumers that could benefit from cheap solar energy in Spain.
In Europe, I want to spend a few minutes to introduce Powertis. Powertis is a utility-scale solar developer, is part of the Soltec Power Holdings family, and our goal is to develop the best large-scale solar PV plants in Americas and in Europe. With 80 plus people in our team, we are currently operating in 8 countries, and we have projects in development, construction, and operation in both Europe and Americas. We don't have significant expertise in hydrogen yet, but we're developing projects in both solar PV, storage, and, as I say, a bit of hydrogen. With that said, hydrogen is a hot topic in everything we do, and we're clearly keeping an eye on what is next to come on the hydrogen industry. Why so? Why green hydrogen is so important? Is because it's one of the key drivers, one of the key vectors for growth in the industry in the years to come. If we were to be in compliance, and we should be in compliance with the Paris Accord, the Paris Agreement, by which we should keep climate change below the 1.5 centigrades, we need to increase the production of hydrogen from 120 million tons to over 600 million tons. That basically means an increase of 6-fold in today's production of hydrogen. Of all that hydrogen, that 600 million tons of hydrogen by the year 2050, roughly 2/3 of them should come from green hydrogen, and about 1/3 from blue hydrogen. So basically means that we're increasing from nothing to almost 500 million tons of green hydrogen in the next 25 years. Hopefully we do sooner, but that's the goal. That's not gonna be easy. That comes with benefits and with challenges. The benefits are clear for all. We're talking about a globe, an industry that is moving away from oil and gas, from hydrocarbons, and with everything that comes with it, particles, NOx, and you name it, into a world in which molecules will be clean, the environment will be cleaner. We're gonna create local jobs. There is a lot of benefits both at the macro and micro level in our society. But then we have to face the challenges, and the challenges are clear right now. We at least foresee 3 challenges. The first one is policy makers. We need to ensure that policymakers not only talk, but actually deliver on what it takes to increase from 0 to these 500 million tons of green hydrogen that we anticipate we'll need in the next 3 decades. And that's a lot. That means change the way we approach pretty much any molecule that we are currently using. And that is a significant change in the way the world has operated in many decades, in the past many decades till today. The second element is we still be dependent on natural gas. So roughly 2/3 of all the hydrogens that we'll need will still be dependent on natural gas, with everything that we unfortunately have learned over the last weeks and months, what it entails to depend on natural gas producers. And there's another challenge critical for the industry is cost. We have to make all these change, all this phasing out and phasing in with the technology that today is many folds more expensive than is natural competitor. So we need to go and be able to create green hydrogen, cost efficient and competitive with the alternative, to make sure that we don't harm the industry, but we actually grow, creating a product that is beneficial for all. And how are we going to do it? Well, we don't have the magic pill, we don't have the magic formula, but we have identified 5 elements that are connected, that I think they're critical to achieve that goal. Some of them are interrelated. So the first one is infrastructure. Producing hydrogen efficiently means a different type of ecosystem. It needs different type of energy production, particularly if all of that is going to come from renewables. So we need to start thinking about aggregation. We need to start thinking about storage. We need to start thinking about complementarity. We need to approach the production of energy in a way that is efficient for the hydrogen production, which is slightly different from what we're doing right now. But we're getting there. We're moving towards there with or without the need of hydrogen. The second element is infrastructure clusters or industry clusters. There is still today a big amount of hydrogen being produced and need in the industry. We all are aware that all those industries are moving towards a green hydrogen. We need to facilitate that. We need to help them to move quicker and faster, because that will kickstart the process and that will enhance the implementation of green hydrogen in our economy. The third element is basically R&D, innovations, not creative thinking. Like we saw in the past in the wind industry, or we're seeing nowadays in the solar industry, we're in the early stage, in the infancy of the hydrogen economy. Panels at one point were in the watts, and eventually now we have panels that are hundreds of watts, many times more efficient and many times cheaper. Same thing happened with the wind industry. Initial wind turbines were nimble, small, now they're massive and very, very efficient. Same thing has to happen in the hydrogen economy, and we need to have all these thinkers and innovators to put all their effort into creating new technologies and new solutions. Fourth element is finance. We're talking about a lot of capital behind these efforts, and that's not going to come easy. So we need to involve from the get-go the big money lenders, all the big levers in the economy, in the financing world, to support that change, because we're talking about billions, if not trillions, for moving to what we are today into a clean molecule of the future. And finally, and related to all of this, the international trade. At the end of the day, one of the beauties is that what you see today, a molecule coming from natural gas or similar or alike, you would see another molecule produced using green hydrogen or alike. And there's already international trades enhancing all of that and benefiting all. We need to start creating that economy, that ecosystem, so that one pulls the other and all together we rise up. As you can see, we're thrilled. We're at the very beginning of this transformation. We want to be part of this transformation, and Spain would be one of the key places where this transformation would happen, because we have it all. On the flip side, there's still many things that has to happen before we get there. And with that, thank you all for being there, and until the next time, bye-bye.
I haven't talked a lot about flexibility on the demand, and I don't want to start talking about hydrogen yet, but I did have a question around the issue of how could you monetize solar other than sort of selling electricity into the grid? And I'm just thinking from the perspective of how you guys design your business models at the current stage, right? So is it it's a simple example? We know that you can sign PPAs. We know that the discount on pay-as-produced solar is much greater than if you go for a baseload contract, but clearly you're not going to be producing electricity at night. How do you sort of bridge that gap? I mean, is it about looking for a technological solution like applying batteries? Is that something that you look at? or is it something more that you're looking to sort of bring other technologies into the mix, or hybridization? How other types of hybridization with wind? How do you see these things playing out? Hugo, how do you see that?
Well, this is a good question, because first of all, is what is the situation now? Okay, from our point of view, Everwood, that our willing is to have PPAs, or at least not having PPAs for most of them, for a long-term PPAs like 10 years or 5 years, because as far as we have enough equity and we don't need these for sizing in the project finance, that we think that it's better to have nowadays to circulate in the market. But even in this case, we have, for example, projects with PPAs, and we pass from, I don't know, to having a bottom in the PPA. Nowadays we have, for example, one with base load and something, and as Alfonso says, the capture price and the difference between the base load and the solar curve is crazy during the last, even during the last months. I remember that I think that in April it was something like 20% less than the average price. So that's something critical. It's something we are learning now, that for sure, thinking on the historical and the past historical capture price for solar is shifting very, very fast. So that's something that for sure in the future we will try to sign, either pay as bid or pay as produce, or pay as produce, or something, a solar curve or something like that. But and another thing like the storage, I think that the storage is for the next 3, 4, 5 years. We need a regulation, as Alfonso said, in order to help not just for this having a storage specifically, but also able to help in this case the solar plants in order to adapt to the market, and even to contribute to the market in terms of even other resources, secondary ancillary services, and so on. But as far as we know, and the models nowadays are not with the regulation we have in place, the economics don't work. So what we are seeing for the projects, for example, we are going to build this year, is not a storage, but something regarding PPAs or coverage, covenants, and so on. On top of that, for example, we are developing hybrid projects and hybridization with wind and solar, which is very good in terms of matching the curves and so on. But this is very residual, because you need a wind resource very close to a solar resource, so it's not able to do so. It's something very particular, very good in this case, but very particular and very hard. So that's it. For the time being, as I resume, for the time being, we are trying to cover this thing through the covenants and PPAs and so on. But we expect, and that's something we are working on in the coming 2 years, I hope, that the storage will be the best solution for this.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of the trickle down, right? So I suppose we're waiting for the other one about the 20% reduction of solar capture, 20%. Still, anyone is going to cry over that one. You know, it's quite the prices are so crazy. Ultimately, you know, yes, it is all about the gas price with a little bit of a sprinkling of a CO2 on the top. We don't have enough renewables. I don't know, for those of you who are not aware of it, but we've had a very dry winter, so the reservoir levels are extremely low. You know, the past quarter should have been is actually meant to be the wettest one, but generally speaking, we tend to have lower prices because there's a lot of sort of run of river hydro sort of dispatching because the reservoirs are full. That hasn't happened this year. So it's going to be interesting when we go back to, the thing to remember is don't project forward what you've been observing in the last few months or the beginning of this year to the rest of lifetime. Well, unless of course you think that climate change is going to mean that this is going to become the norm. If you look historically, we've had drier periods and wetter periods, but something to bear in mind. One question that has risen, I'm just looking quickly at the question and answer sessions, is around the need for long duration storage. Yeah, I mean, the simple number is if you have a X number of megawatts and you put in a 2-hour battery, you can just about peak shave and have a sort of fairly flat daily profile of dispatch. But longer term duration, do we need more longer term duration and incentives for that to actually be able to sort of integrate renewables and in particular solar in a more intelligent way? Maria, what do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. I think that it's been properly explained by my colleagues. No, we are not inventing the wheel. The tools that we have right now are with the ancillary services, getting the best state-of-the-art technology on storage. But of course, and again, and I'm repeating myself, but the long term, it's more than needed. I would like to add to this. Is not only what you do with the deployment of the energy and how to optimize that and the injection on the grid, but also maybe would like to call everybody's attention into the large scale projects, which can definitely have a very important say on this. The larger and best optimized project, of course, will reduce the LCOE and enhance the margins for that. We need to, of course, properly design that type of projects, but they are really the key into making more reliable and giving the proper security to the grid. Storage is obviously a way to go, and maybe I would like to do a little bit link now to hydrogen, because if we are in the path now into linking those two, hydrogen is and I'm not stepping into the second panel, but of course the to be taken into consideration, but in link with focus in solar, it needs to go hand by hand with large scale. Why? Because we still are not competitive enough as to make green hydrogen interesting enough for off-takers. Either an off-taker is absolutely committed to go 100% will come from hydrogen. That's the aim. It's a lot, and that only will happen through solar, through storage. Can we implement, and not only technically but also on a regulation base, a smart way of doing chemical to power? Because up to now it's really challenging. Chemical to power storage, we're using hydrogen storage, urine storage just for solar, just for hydrogen, hybridization. Everything needs to go into the mix, put our brains to say, this is where it works. And maybe, and this is a point that we really need to get in together, explain to the regulators, say, this is the way it works. Let's put it into a paper and let's go for it.
Yeah, so yeah, I think there is no hydrogen without renewables. Well, there is no hydrogen without pretty cheap electricity, and it has to be clean. Otherwise, by definition, there's no green hydrogen. So it's a bit of a circular argument. But certainly, if we can't, if we can't deblock the administrative issues around being able to sort of deploy capacity in an area that we have access to, it's not that the rights of way don't exist. I mean, Red Eléctrica has done a pretty good job and has a pretty transparent platform to tell you where it is that there is, where the authorizations are for different types of projects. And we know that there's a lot of interest. The question is whether the business model is set up. And by definition, this isn't plug up combined cycle power station and sign a 20-year gas offtake agreement and hope it makes money. I mean, this is going to be run on a much more how shall I say, much more dynamic process, whether you leave a bit aside, a little bit of space aside to put sort of a couple of tank storage, you know, battery racks next door to your substation, or whatever it is, you know, whether you're looking at wind and you're going to put some solar panels underneath it and try to optimize the connection capacity. I think there's a lot of different sort of ways to think about the particular issues and the challenges. I did want to bring one issue around just the thing about hydrogen. I'm sure everyone's going to talk about it later, but it's like, we tend to be in Spain quite happy to talk around the issue that hydrogen will be a major interesting source. So with Spain, Iberia could be a potential source for it. For the rest of Europe, I do find it, just as an anecdote, it's like, well, the government seems to be quite happy that we'd export this stuff without thinking about what's actually going to be required for that. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, that's the supply push. Where's the demand pull? We need to see some sort of incentives domestically to see people switch away from natural gas, in particular from the harder to decarbonize sectors where, you know, natural gas is required for heating and stuff like that in industry. I'm talking about homes and stuff. But talking about homes, which is, I want to revert back to solar, something that's beginning to happen a lot more nowadays, especially when I'm Googling stuff and I'm getting sort of messages popping up promising me that I'll be able to set up PV panels on top of my rooftop cheaper than anybody else. This is a new wave, auto-generation, right? Autoconsumo. And I'm thinking that this, we're quite happy to think about large scale and the integration thereof. Do we think, what sort of role do you think, Alfonso, is auto-generation, self-generation going to play with respect to meeting the targets by 2030, 2050? Are we going to see a huge expansion of an underlying sector like we see in Germany, for example, a lot of like installation companies and things like that? How do you do you have a particular view as to how this is likely to evolve?
Yeah, maybe this is not our main area of expertise, but as you say, Kim, it's true that you go into Google and you have 10 offers to install the cheapest and best panels in the wall in your house and to produce energy for your entire neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, it's true that the subsidies from the government, I think they were between 30 and 40%, could make installing PV modules attractive. Indeed, a couple of months ago, and I was making numbers with the subsidy. I was thinking, but this is not with the subsidy. This is not so far to the cost we have of installing a large scale project in Spain. So yeah, it will definitely play a key role, because in the end, it's solar capacity. It's being added to the market, and if it's we produce or we install 3-4 gigs of large scale solar every year, plus 1 additional gig of distributed solar with small scale consumers or even households. Yeah, it's something that we need to take into consideration in our projection of solar capacity, also to build the power price curve that guys, as you do, Kim, that I'm sure you can take it into consideration. And I think, yeah, if it happened in Germany, why it shouldn't happen in Spain, where you have with appropriate subsidies, as it's happening in the moment.
I mean, it's one of those angles where if you had some reformas done in your house or whatever, you spoke to people 5 years ago, the team of plumbers and electricians, you talk to them about solar PV, they had no idea, right? But nowadays you talk to them and they always have one other guy joining the team who can basically provide that type of service. Maria, are you guys moving in Soto? Do you tend to just stick to large scale, or are you also sort of looking around the issue of self-generation?
Both. We are tackling both divisions, or both scenarios, because we find that there is a lot of appetite in both, and the type of services that we can provide, of course, has synergy. Whether we are more focused on large consumers, so let me put it this: large scale self-consumption. We are not entering into the market as googling and finding Soto Solar selling panels for your roof. We found there is a space, and very interesting, because it somehow links to the needs to medium small companies that are really suffering from a very, very high prices. So it's, as I was saying some minutes ago, it really adds to the same conversation that we are putting together into how we can make solar a reality and good for everyone. No, large scale has its own challenge, of course, from the regulation. Is more medium long term, and that's how we face that. Autoconsumo, we've seen a huge appetite for it. A lot of competition, but very good also, because it really adds to the conversation in which we say every single company, being that small, medium, particular, are aware of the benefits of solar. And that message is super strong. It's very, very strong. Whether we would be then talking about what is the price, no, for the PPA that I'm putting on top of it. It's 70, it's 60, or it is more that I would like to be in a reliable company that has the whole value chain and can provide not only for me but at different stages. So that's more talking on our company, but being a little bit more abroad and the whole picture. Autoconsumo, I think it's going to be leading the fast track of doing things right. I think the regulation is much more flexible and much more quicker, maybe it's easier. I see the investors in a lot of appetite. I see the receivers, the off-takers also willing to do so. So if we are seeing a very incremental way of enlarging the Soto, the solar in Spain, not only in Spain but also in Europe and the rest of the world, will be through self-consumption.
Right, good. We're going to run out of time, and I did want to allow you a bit of time to put your sort of closing thoughts together. Hugo, do you want to start?
Okay, well, just to say, as many of the things we will say during this chat, I think that first thing is that I think that the future is solar for sure. Apart from storage is required, hybridization and so on, but what we need is a clear path or a clear support from the government. Not just we are not talking about subsidized, but regulatory framework according to what the market is. And that's it.
Well, Alfonso?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Yeah, from my side, again, repeating that I think we are living quite a bright moment in the solar sector, and what we all need to do is to keep working to that continues in the same way, and that meaning maybe simplifying the administrative process, trying to avoid, let's say, short-term regulatory noise, and again, investing in adjacent technologies that will allow us to deploy as much capacity as possible within the solar framework.
Right, Maria, I've got your to pass the last word to you as well. I've got the little expression future-proofing, right? Your projects and things from you. But your last words.
Flexibility, holistic approach, and long-term view.
As simple as that. Yeah. So my view on this is if you're actually involved in the sector right now, if you had been asleep for the last 6 months, you probably won't realize that we're going through a series of pretty dramatic regulatory interventions. The good thing about them, I suppose, is just to bear in mind that they have a best before date, right? So these things can't last forever. You've probably heard in the news about the sort of cap on gas. So it's basically, which is actually a subsidy on thermal power generation. Talk about turning everything upside down. We're actually going to be subsidizing coal-fired power stations and gas-fired power stations. It doesn't matter. It won't be so aggressive that renewables will be out of the picture. But it certainly does raise questions as to where it is that the obligation and the interest would be from the authorities. And whilst the government is still trying to deal with short-term issues, I think we do have to start focusing a lot more on sort of medium to long term. So let me thank everyone for their contribution. I think we've had a little wide discussion. Hopefully we haven't, we've thrown in a few pointers for the next discussion on hydrogen. which is a very interesting topic. I hope you stay with us. And with that, I'll thank our panelists. I'll thank Energy Box, and I'll hand back to Yvette. Is it Yvette or Bruce who will take over from us now? Oh, by the way, I see there's some questions that have been also answered, which we haven't answered live. We might just go online and sort of type some replies to you from there. So, you know, if you haven't heard back from us yet, you might be hearing back from us within the next few minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.